All right, so today has been a very busy day. Like, busy. Well, it's the holiday after the holiday. So today is July 5th. So, you know. But this feels like a Monday reload. Like, two Mondays stacked on top of one another. Hold on one second. All right, I have to tell Zara or Zeta to calm down. She's singing in there. She does her little singing. Anyway, I had done this video prior, so be sure to join the Discord down in the description box below. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Or subscribe, share, and like, and then comment. So I did this video before, and it probably got lost or deleted because I went through and just did a clean sweep of everything. And it was talking about Bellevue because Bellevue has been the darling of this area, but I have always said that it's not sustainable. You can't have this rapid development and you're dealing with a city that's not designed to handle what it's trying to do. Bellevue is meant to be a city that is probably at where it's at, about 150,000. And that's really, really pushing it. Anything beyond that is not going to be comfortable. And the reason for that is because 80% of Bellevue is single family homes. 80%. So that literally leaves the downtown core and some other areas that are not. Then when you look within downtown Bellevue, 80% of that, or is it 70%? Something like that. The vast majority of that land is spoken for. So now some folks will say they'll just zone stuff to change it. Well, not necessarily. Bellevue, unlike a lot of other cities, does not have any sort of plans, anything in play that's going to address housing density. There's nothing that's on paper like it is in Seattle and Tacoma and other places where they're trying to do, duplexes and different things like that. See, it doesn't fit into the aesthetics of Bellevue. So the problem with that is that you have all of this. It's slow growth, really. I mean, it's fast but kind of slow. Their population is inching up, but it's inching up with people who have a lot of money, right? Your garden variety Bellevue person that's been there for 40 years are not the wealthy. This was not the wealthy side of anything. It was just a regular city. A lot of people make you want to think that I live in Bellevue, but it's like when you look and see their grandma bought a house, and so it's like you inherited a fortune. But you have a situation where Bellevue is starting to grow, and for some, eventually, it's not going to be attainable. Some of the people that own homes, once the taxes get to a certain point, they're not going to be able to afford those homes. These are facts. It has happened everywhere. Bellevue right now is one of the most expensive places to buy a home, even more so than Seattle, by far. They're well over the million mark. Seattle's right at the million. We're still at under 600,000. So it's not sustainable. Bellevue was not ever designed to be a big city. It wasn't designed to have all the skyscrapers that you see. There was a time when every day you would check the business journal and there would be a new project where you have a developer building, a 40-story building, a 20-story building. They're adding 2 buildings at a time. They're building 4 buildings at a time. They're adding 10 buildings. They're adding all this stuff, and it really is not sustainable. Now, I've said this before, and I've had people push back a few years ago. I don't have as many pushbacks anymore because proof comes out. It's not like I'm just talking out my butt. I actually have documentation that talks about this. There's projections. Now, projections can sometimes be wrong. I get that. There are certain things that developers will say, and they may have to alter and tweak things. But realtors also will give projections or ideas or thoughts about what the trends look like, the trend lines. Now that can change. You throw in a recession or you throw in something that nationally rocks us as a nation, then yeah, there's domino effects. So right now, is a tough time for Bellevue because all that glitters ain't gold. Amazon is now the second largest employer in Bellevue. It passed T-Mobile. And you have all these big companies that are coming into Bellevue, tiny, tiny town Bellevue. And I remember when Seattle was wanting to charge a head tax, which I still think is the stupidest thing ever, and they pulled that back, but Bellevue said we're open for business. Because at the time, they only had a few hundred people that were Amazon folks. And Amazon has quickly, rapidly built up their employer base very quickly. And the problem with that is that Bellevue is not, and I've said this before, Bellevue is not, you can hate Tacoma and call it the armpit of a pig. And that Bellevue is basically the beautiful, sweet blonde. You can call it that. But the problem is that Bellevue will never, ever be able to handle that type of growth. They're just not designed for that. They're not. They're a suburb. They're an edge city of Seattle. They're a suburb. That's it. But you have all these tech companies coming in and developers building, and it's not sustainable. Now you have prices, so what's going to happen is you're going to have a whole lot of office space and no one to fill them because the price keeps going up and up and up and up. I did a video talking about even here. Retail spaces they're trying to sell for $32 a square. That's in Tacoma, the cheap place. Imagine what it's like up in Bellevue. You got to do the numbers. And so even there's a glass ceiling, and Seattle hit that glass ceiling. They thought they could break it, and they realized that's some pretty strong glass. And Bellevue is also facing the same issue where you have a glass ceiling. Now, it may be higher or whatever than Seattle's, but you do have, or even lower, but you have a glass ceiling. And soon you're going to see a lot of companies start to shed office space because A, people aren't coming back to work as quickly as they normally were. There's a lot of work from home. Work from home makes a whole lot better. It's just better overall. People are happier. Some people want to work in an actual facility, but yeah, it's so that's a big part of it. The other part is it's expensive. So companies have to look at their bottom line and say, man, it just, the price is, the juice is not worth the squeeze. Now, Seattle is to blame because Seattle could have went and worked with these other cities. They could have went to Snohomish County and talked to the mayor of Everett and said, hey, Everett mayor, Amazon is our main cash cow. We want to spread some of that wealth. So let's enter into a program to where we can try to get and talk up getting Amazon into Everett. You guys could probably do about 1,500 people. 1,500 workers here would be great. That would take Everett's economy and just blow it through the roof. Right? Even if they, let's say 1,000. 1,500 is a little much. 1,000. Then they go down to Tacoma. Remember the pig pit? And say, you know what, you are truly a city. You have the infrastructure in place that can handle what's going on. It's not, infrastructure is not just roads and rail, which I'll get to, but it's everything else. You have all the cultural amenities that people look for when they go to a city. Bellevue does not. They're trying, but they really don't. They barely have enough parks, and that's even lacking. Here, there's parks on every corner almost. So you can say what you want about Tacoma and how it's, crime-ridden thug land and trash, but it's designed to be a city. That doesn't change. Tacoma could have easily taken in about 7,500 jobs or 5,000 jobs, and it would, again, blow the economy here through the roof. But it would be okay. If you look at Nashville, they have about 7,500 employees that will eventually be there. It's not going to hurt Nashville, because Nashville's already a big city. It can keep sprawling out. They have all those suburbs. I know Nashville very, very, like the back of my hand. It's my stomping grounds, old stomping grounds. No, Nashville. They took the Gulch, and it's a way different place than it was just 10 years ago. Right? So it makes sense. Now not Atlanta, but Nashville is like Atlanta. It's the hot spot to be. Well, Seattle didn't do that. They didn't say, let's spread the wealth. Let's just be greedy and keep it ourselves. And Amazon itself is greedy. We already know this. You have two greedy partners. And somebody's got to lose. And guess who lost? Seattle did. You have all this wreck of issues that have happened, not just because of Bellevue, poor leadership as well. You had a mayor at the time who she didn't know what she was doing, and it continued to be a precipitous dip. Now you have a mayor that knows what he's doing, and it's like, which fire out of the million fires do I put out first? And there's some that I have to go layers deep in order to solve the issue, because on the surface it seems small, but underneath there's a lot of mess, right? But if Seattle said, hey, let's spread the wealth, it would not be running into the financial situation that it ran into, where it was in the red. And so it had to find ways to pay for all this stuff. And so taxing Amazon, doing all these different things that kind of made them want to look at other places, became a big, huge point. But they could have worked with the region. The region can support Amazon, not one city. Seattle's a big city. You add up all the key cities here, and still Seattle's bigger than all of them. But if you spread that out over a population of 4 million people versus just a million, then the infrastructure issues are not as much of a problem. You don't have to worry about the parking issues as much. You don't have to worry about, the lack of good housing. You don't have to worry about all these things that are becoming a crushing issue for Seattle. And then basically Amazon just paddled across the lake to Bellevue. Bellevue is a Republican stronghold, nothing against that. But the idea was those Democrats don't know what they're doing, and they just want to just tax you. Well, now Bellevue is saying we got to raise some taxes. Because we're going to, in a couple of years, they're going to be in the red, literally. By the time we start to prepare down here in Tacoma to open up our BRT line and looking forward to eventually the link from Seattle coming down, the light rail train coming down to Tacoma, Bellevue will be sitting in some debt. They've even admitted that. They're going to be sitting on some big, hefty debt. You see all the time now where there's a lot of different companies that are pulling back saying, well, we don't need as much office space as we thought. But yet they still keep building office space. You can't hardly find the office space here that we need. There are businesses that want 50,000 square feet of retail space downtown, and you can't find it. You can find it like you could throw a quarter and hit 50,000 square feet of retail all over the place. There's an overbuilding. And instead of Bellevue being smart about it and saying, stop, let's put in residential into this. If you are a residential developer, we want you. Put in those 20-story and 30-story, 5 different buildings. Put those in, but they're not doing that. So now you have a city that eventually is going to reach a glass ceiling as far as population because it just can't hold anymore based on the current laws, how they're written. Now, if they changed the single-family housing law thing and changed that, then maybe. But right now, you can't build anything beyond that unless it's in certain key areas. Tacoma, kind of spread out. Seattle, spread out. A lot of cities here, it's kind of spread out. You can kind of do the duplex thing here and there and all of that. Bellevue, not so much. So it's hurting them, right? The amount of people coming to work there is hurting them. They need services. People think 25,000 employees, that's great. But those 25,000 people have to poop, pee, and wash their hands. It's a lot of sewage. And when you're a tiny town like what Bellevue is, you don't have that type of money. Now, does Tacoma have that type of money? Yes. It's a much bigger city. It's designed for that. We're down here controlling about 1 million people just in the South Sound. Bellevue's not doing that. It's not a major city of anything. It's a suburb. Along with Redmond and all the others, just a cluster of rich, wealthy white suburbs. They cannot afford, ironically, the utilities or the infrastructure needed. They can't, and they don't have the land for it. So even though they're building the light rail line underground, which I knew this, and someone said, yeah, that's what you're talking about. Okay. But later on, just a few months ago, they're just now admitting that even the light rail system is not going to be able to handle the flow. Why? Bellevue's too damn small. When you look at the stops that they have, they're not really that far apart to begin with. And then when you're talking about a tiny city that they're really, Soundtrans is really trying to like, let's make it second Seattle by having several stops. You're really not doing anything but slowing down the train, and it's in such a tight area. This isn't San Francisco where you have 800,000 people this is 150,000 people in a pretty decent sized area. So there's not enough that's going to be able to really, you're not going to do much. And you're not going to whittle away all that traffic. All that traffic on those tiny streets that Bellevue has, they lack highways, interstates, all of that is going to come back to haunt them. And that has been a common theme that people have been talking about. These are people who do know what they're talking about. These are experts that are saying, like, yeah, the writing's on the wall. Financials, the writing is already on the wall. The city is aware of that. Because you now have to accommodate and say, well, we got to have extra police. As you grow in size, you got to have more police. You got to have more everything. Fire stations, where do you put them? Bellevue wasn't designed for that. You know what I mean? It's just like Spanaway. It's not designed to be Tacoma. If you try to fit Tacoma into Spanaway, you're going to run into a whole lot of headaches. It's just not built for that. It's a suburb, right? It's not designed for that. You might have a better shot even with Olympia being more built up and developed like that than you would even Bellevue. But you have all these developers building, and even still on the drawing board, there's more. Here in Tacoma, for example, we have built so much. There's so many residential projects going on right now and in the future that we can't handle the poop. These old pipes downtown, those little pipes, they can't handle all of that development and the future stuff. When the town center eventually comes, imagine. You're talking 600 people, 600 units in one concentrated area. Multiplier effect, 1,200 people in one little area. Okay, she's got to wait. So it's impossible. So all over downtown, you see all the construction going on the roads because they have to dig up everything. And UW-T, up there by where the town center is, all over, there's streets destroyed and cut off downtown because they're having to upgrade the sewer system and water system. That's how much development is going on downtown and what's going to come in the future. A lot of ours right now is residential, and we're talking mid-rises. And there's so much going on that this city has to update all of that. Bellevue doesn't have the coin to do that. It doesn't have the coin to make that happen. And it shares a county with the biggest fish in the region. And when I say region, I'm talking not Canada, but I'm talking Pacific Northwest, the biggest guy, Seattle. You're not going to get much coin from that. Most of those resources are going to go to Seattle. Here in Pierce County, we're the biggest fish. You're not going to get resources going to Orting that outdo what we get here. Doesn't work that way. You're going to get, most of the funds are going to go directly up into Tacoma. You got to have the biggest guy survive because without Tacoma, Pierce County is nothing. So it's the same thing like Olympia. You're not going to dump all your resources in some of these little tiny towns around Olympia. You got to either give it to Lacey and or Olympia or both because they're about the same size. Lacey's a little bit bigger, but that's how it works. Bellevue is barely trying to make these things work, and it's becoming harder and harder and harder to do. So the writing is on the wall. So when people talk about, well, there's nothing going on in Tacoma, it's boring, I disagree. There's a lot of changes happening. But Tacoma is focusing on growing correctly, and I hope they can learn. Bellevue didn't learn from Seattle. They thought it was a bunch of libtards. But those libtards really and truly had some truth in what they were saying. Like, we have to do something because we're struggling, man. Bellevue's like, well, we're open. We understand business. And now Bellevue is hurting. Not today so much. The pain is there. The pain is there. But that pain is going to get deeper and deeper and deeper because the city can't keep adding more people. There's several constraints. One is they don't have proper zoning over the rest of the city. Two, the values of properties are so high, the average person in America or in the world can't afford that. The vast majority of the population in Bellevue can't afford that. But the average person can't afford that. So that's going to slow your population down. Not having a big enough population, you don't have as many people to tax. And without that, you don't have enough for all the resources and infrastructure and everything else that you need to keep a city running full tilt. You can do it a little bit, but not to where you need it. And that's where you have to raise taxes in order to accommodate that. Or create an income tax. And people have been talking about that. Something has to happen, but the city can't continue the way that it is. It doesn't work that way. The city should have, both Seattle and Bellevue should have pleaded with Amazon and say, yeah, put jobs all over this region. It actually helps everyone. It lowers the amount of people who are on the interstate, which we can't build more interstates. We're stuck. Like, spread the wealth so that everybody has a piece of the pie, not just two people. So those two people are gorging off this pie and everybody else is starving. We get their problems, but we also are starting to get their benefits down here because all of that money of those workers are coming down here. Why sit up there and make $300,000 a year and then you either live in a tiny small apartment and paying $4,000 and $5,000 a month, or you try to find a house, but the house is worth like 1.5, 1.8. The juice is not worth the squeeze. When you can easily go down to Tacoma, buy a whole house for like $1.5 million, and you're going to get you a castle. Why? You see what I'm saying? And a lot of people are doing that. So that flood is creating a lot of issues. Down here, we're basking in the glow. I don't want to gloat too much because problems can happen. But we're getting the population. They're getting the jobs. But we get the benefits because people go up there, work, come home after fighting all that traffic, and they spend their money down here. And you're seeing our downtown just grow. Every day you see changes happening in our downtown. You're seeing how things are evolving and moving, businesses opening. You're seeing that because it's not as difficult here as it is up there. It's hard to run any business. It doesn't matter the size. It's very hard. I couldn't imagine running Amazon. It's like running a government. I couldn't even imagine. But the decision of keeping everything there has been a major, and when I say there, I'm talking Seattle and Bellevue, is going to create a problem. And I think the way of life in Bellevue is going to change drastically forever. It's not going to be the same. It's not designed for if you think about it, Seattle's Amazon has about 50,000 people. Some say 75,000, or maybe that's what it can have, but 50,000. And Bellevue's going to have 25,000. So you're trying to fit half of your workforce. You have 50,000 in, so total 75. You have 50,000 in Seattle, and you want to add 25,000 in Bellevue. But the city sizes don't match up. You have one city over here that's really licking at 800,000 people. You have this one over here who's barely squeaking out at 150,000. And you're adding that many jobs, and you don't think the road system's going to be able to handle that? The infrastructure is going to be able to handle that? Even if no one lives there and they just drive in, imagine what that does to the road. Imagine about parking, school systems, everything. You have to add and build in a place that you can't really add and build too much. So eventually there will come a point where it's not going to be pleasant. It isn't. And really for all of the east side, there's going to be certain areas that are fine. But there's certain places where all of this development comes at a very critical cost. Tell me what your thoughts are. But yeah, recently in the news, there's been, the whole talk of Bellevue's the golden child and Bellevue this, Bellevue that. But they're now looking at their financials and they're like, yep, soon there's a storm. And we know there's a storm coming. We see what's happening to our revenues. What do? You need to add more people for city services. They're just not prepared for that. The jobs came too quick. It's not like a company that slowly grows and you get to nurse off of that as a city. No, they're just boom, 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 boom. Adding all these people come in. You haven't even got $1 yet from any person that works there. And you have all these people working. It's a strain. But so all those people still add to the cost. They add to the cost. Imagine what that looks like. Because for the city, that cost is still there. Even though time has passed, that cost is still there. You're still having to recuperate what you've lost. So they're behind the ball already. And soon, they know, like, there comes a date when we basically are no longer in the black and we're basically in the red and we're going to be in debt. We have to do something soon in order to try to cut that off. They're still going to be in the red, no matter what they do. It's just how long are you going to be in the red and how deep are you going to be in the red? That's the question. Now, Seattle, on the other hand, is no longer in the red. It's now in the black because it passed certain laws, basically, that I think is probably more sensible and trying to recuperate money, right? But still, their services are not going to be where they could have been because they have been bleeding cash for so long. It's going to take some time to kind of get back up to speed to where you need to be. But again, you have a city that can flex its muscles. Doesn't take much for it to bounce back. You got a tiny town that's trying to live the life of a big city. It's not going to work. Even if it flexes its muscles, it's still not enough to take care of all of that red. We'll see. Anyhow, tell me what your thoughts are. Be sure to join the Discord down in the description box below. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, and comment. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.